So this is Elizabeth Clare Brewington with Brightside Global Trade TV. We're running a British series that's sponsored by BritFix, and we have the founder here today, and she's going to introduce yourself and head over to the Facebook BritFix page because we're going to have a lot of fun, lots of history, lots of great articles and blogs and stories that you want to hear. So Jackie, we won't do slides. We'll just have you speak, and then I'll bring slides in later. So go ahead.
That's fine. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, my name is Jackie Longwell, and I have actually lived here for 31 years. We lived in Texas a couple of years, but mostly, obviously, I was raised in England and even married. I lived there for several years. The premise behind BritFix started about 3 years ago in Goldsboro, North Carolina. We used to be able to have access to more British foods, and over time they diminished. And my husband and I already had some space in a local store, and just before Christmas, I was doing the usual ordering process of our Christmas crackers, Christmas puddings, mince pies, that kind of thing. And I happened to mention it would be wonderful if we had something local. And my husband got busy sorting that out with the paperwork and the license we need. And that's how we grew. And we literally grew from a very small space within our host store, the shops at Royal Marketplace, to our biggest space that we have currently. And our inventory, we began with the iconic things that we thought people would like, the crunchies, flakes, that kind of thing, things that we knew that people who were expats, and it is a military town, so we have a lot of expats. And then thereafter, we grew our inventory from requests. People would say, can you get this, can you get that, and we did our best, and we tried. And we've actually added several importers now to our vendor list so that we can, if we can't get it with one, we can possibly get it with another. We survived COVID and some of the closures. We survived the supply line issues, and more recently, anything coming from England, we had to deal with some fuel surcharges. Thankfully, they have been lifted. Sometimes we'll tell people, because obviously things have to be shipped, sometimes we'll tell people that we really can't acquire what it is that they want for a price that would be obviously acceptable. But the two things when we started the business were availability, so to give our customers access to some of these home goodies that they were used to, and also affordability, because when I first came here, we would go to some stores in Chapel Hill and have a wonderful time buying all of the British products that we miss so much, Heinz baked beans, etc., but couldn't go back for some time because we literally would have to save our money. So it was very high end. So we do try to keep our margins fairly low. The one thing I wanted to say to Ian after we were talking about the meats, I remember growing up, I was telling someone this the other day, when I was growing up, our Sunday roast was either lamb or beef, not so much the beef, but the lamb was New Zealand lamb. And then when Britain went into the common market, there was some, restrictions about where we could buy certain products from. But chicken was a fairly rare roast dinner for us. I mean, typically maybe around Christmas time, of course, we had our turkey. And I think part of that was, and I don't know if Ian will agree on this, is most people who had chickens they had the chickens for the eggs, because that post-war period, there was a lot of things that people couldn't get with rationing. And so they weren't necessarily killing their chickens or mass producing them for people to eat. I also remember growing up, we ate a lot of what we called offal meat, which over here they probably wouldn't care to have. My mum used to make, of course, steak and kidneys.
Organ meats, they call them here.
Organ meats, yes. Stuffed hearts. We would have things like that, and they were relatively inexpensive, of course, liver and those kinds of things. But over the years, as I would go back and visit, as Julia said, the supermarket started to change, become more, I called it, they became more continental. So you can actually buy a plethora of foods from lots of different countries in the supermarket. I remember the first time I went back to a Tesco's, and the cheese, I guess counter, it would be the cheese counter, was so long because there were so many different cheeses in there. Obviously, we can't get that. We are restricted when we buy in foods. Obviously, certain things we cannot bring in, like the meat products, but we do go through companies here that actually make them to the British recipe. They're few and far between. There's actually more up north than there are down here. So we do have to shop around a little bit. The other thing we try to do is we try to get what I call the traditional foods and sweets, because that's when we have expats come in, and some of them, like Julia, have lived here for 50 odd years. In fact, we have a few customers that have lived here much longer than that. They're looking for the things that they remember. So we try, pardon?
Comfort foods.
Comfort food. And you know, it is something, I don't get to be at the store as often as I would like. Some of you who already know me, I'm actually a caregiver. My mother came over to live with us in 97, but now she's 91 and she needs, anyway, she's under hospice. But when I do get to go, I like to listen to the feedback from our customers. I enjoy that, listening to them go, oh, they have this, they have that. In fact, I was there yesterday, and three young ladies to me came in from Wake Forest, I believe. So it's about an hour and a half away. And you would have thought it was Christmas. They just could not get over the things that they found. And that was really pleasing to me. And so I say that too, because several people have asked us why we don't do online. Every once in a while, I'll send a parcel when people ask, but there's lots of online British food shops if you look around. Two things. One, the time it would take is not where we are at this season of our life. We can't do that right now. But also, I think you miss that experience. People coming, as I said, and going into the store, finding things they haven't seen in a while. I get lots of positive comments about they feel like it's like a little bit of going home. They can't go home, but they feel like a little bit of home is right there in BritFix. So that's very encouraging. I've been working with Brightside promotion, and they are helping me. I'm not
we calling you?
No.
Somebody calling
I'm
you.
not you know, this is we were in education. My husband was military, then we was in education. So retail has been a learning curve for us, and we have certainly learned a lot. And Brightside Promotions are helping us to expand, at least in the marketing area. So this month we focused on some of the foods that we have there that we felt like people would recognize, and if they didn't recognize them, they would learn something. And so if you go to the website, we featured things like Lancashire Eccles cakes, which is my all-time favorite. the last time I went to England, my cousin knew enough about me to know how much I like them, and they were actually in my bedroom waiting for me when I got there. They have been around. You talk about the history of food. They have been around a very long time, as you can see from some of the history. But we know at least we can trace it back to Oliver Cromwell, because we discovered that Oliver Cromwell actually banned them because he thought they had an evil element. I think it had more to do that they were from up north, because they're made up obviously in Lancashire, in the what's now the Greater Manchester area. They're filled with currants, which is your dried black currants. Very rich. Typically, they're in a
Oliver Cromwell is innocent. That sounds like a later myth they brought in. He actually enjoyed stuff like that.
Oh, really? Is that a myth?
Cromwell.
Maybe he was a closet Eccles cake eater, but he just didn't want the rest of the.
In fact, in Liverpool and Manchester, it was Prince Rupert that massacred the locals.
Oh, really? Well, I don't know what he did to the locals, but he felt like Eccles cakes were definitely off the menu, supposedly. Obviously, they survived, unlike him, but they survived. So they're also known as, we called them fly cakes when I was growing up. It's kind of like Garibaldi biscuits. We called fly cemeteries, anything that had the currants in them.
Don't forget parking.
Pardon?
Don't forget parking.
Right. Right. There's lots of, well,
it's like a cake with molasses and oatmeal.
Yes.
Parking.
Yeah. It's
Parking.
very sweet.
Yes.
Now where do you get your foods from, Ian?
Yeah.
In New York. I mean, how do you buy food?
My as of Keswick does sometimes, but mostly have to make my own. And you have to remember that it's in the barrios where you can get things like the organ meats. I often serve guests roast heart.
Roast heart.
And they think it's like, look, you've got meat with the pure protein, relatively sparing on the fat, which is juicy, delicious, and cheap.
Okay.
I mean, an ox heart will cost you about $5 for 3 or 4 pounds of pure protein.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, I love ox heart, and I serve it to lots of guests who sometimes think it's filet mignon.
Yeah.
But then, I've got people who think that haggis is a vegetarian dish, so there's no telling. Must be how I cook them.
Maybe.
Okay. Well, Jackie, we'll come back with the others. I want to just make sure that we get Mr. Dixon on and then Ian back on, and then I'll come back and we'll keep doing the slides in between. But you're watching Brightside Global Trade TV. We're doing a British series, and stay on and keep watching. And if you are, write us a comment and tell us what you thought about it. And if you like any of the products, let us know.